My boyfriend said, "I'm giving you one last chance to become the woman I deserve." After years of being made to feel like everything I did fell short, I simply thanked him. Then I handed him the divorce papers I had quietly prepared months earlier. My name is Claire Bennett. I'm 41 years old and I had been with Ethan for 14 years, 11 of them as his wife. We had 2 children, 9 and 7, and for far too long I convinced myself they were reason enough to keep believing our marriage could still be saved. From the outside, our life looked almost ideal. We lived in a quiet neighborhood with excellent schools, owned a comfortable 4-bedroom home with a backyard where the kids spent every summer evening, drove reliable cars and never worried about paying the mortgage, buying groceries, or covering medical bills. I worked as a senior project manager, earning about $140,000 a year. It wasn't extraordinary wealth, but it gave our family a stable, comfortable life. Ethan hadn't worked since our oldest child was born, a decision we had made together because he wanted to be there for every milestone, from first words and first steps to the first day of school. I never questioned it. I believed we were building a partnership, not keeping score of who sacrificed more. For several years, that arrangement worked. I focused on my career while Ethan cared for the children and managed the house. Even after long work days, I came home ready to help with dinner, homework, bath time, and anything else that needed to be done because that's what partners did. Somewhere along the way, though, partnership quietly turned into expectation, and expectation slowly became entitlement. During the last 6 years of our marriage, nothing I did ever seemed to be enough. I could spend 12 exhausting hours at work, fight traffic all the way home, cook dinner, help our daughter practice spelling, finish our son's science project with him, and still end the evening being criticized because I'd loaded the dishwasher the wrong way. "You know the plates are supposed to face inward," Ethan would say, standing behind me with his arms folded. "I'll fix them." "That's not the point, Claire. I shouldn't have to keep telling you." Little by little, ordinary mistakes stopped feeling ordinary. Every forgotten detail or imperfect decision became another piece of evidence in the invisible case Ethan seemed determined to build against me. For years, I responded the same way. I apologized, explained myself, and promised to do better because I genuinely believed one more effort might finally be enough. Even after exhausting workdays, I bought flowers on the way home, planned dates I was too tired to enjoy, and spent entire evenings studying Ethan's reactions, hoping I'd finally gotten something right. Eventually, I began measuring my worth by his approval. A smile felt like success, a sigh meant I'd failed again, and silence usually signaled another conversation about everything I was doing wrong. The hardest part wasn't what it did to me, it was what it was teaching our children. One evening, I burned a tray of vegetables while answering an urgent work call. Before Ethan even said a word, our 9-year-old daughter quickly looked at him and whispered, "Mom didn't mean to." Seeing her instinctively defend me broke something inside me. She had already learned to anticipate his criticism, yet I still convinced myself staying together was best for the children. I blamed stress, work, and a difficult season in our marriage because accepting the truth felt far more frightening than making excuses. That illusion finally began to crack about 8 months before I handed Ethan the divorce papers. I'd just survived one of the worst weeks of my career after a major construction project nearly collapsed because of a supplier's mistake. By the time I drove home that Friday night, my head hurt so badly the streetlights blurred through the windshield. That pattern followed us everywhere. After a family vacation I'd spent weeks planning, Ethan complained for nearly a month that the hotel room had been too small. The place Melissa and her husband stayed had a private balcony. He said it without looking at me. Ours had a balcony. It faced the parking lot. It still had an ocean view. I didn't raise his voice. He only looked at me for a moment before saying the sentence I would remember for years. "You always settle for almost good enough." That was the moment I realized nothing I did would ever be enough for him. No matter how much effort I put into our family, someone else was always doing it better. He was always comparing me to someone else. One day it was Melissa. Another day it was Daniel's wife. If it wasn't them, it was Mark's wife. There was always someone doing more than I was. "You don't make me feel special anymore. You never plan romantic things. Other women still want their husbands. I feel like a single father even though you live here." The line that hurt most always came when I questioned another unnecessary expense. "You're not the woman I fell in love with." I remember finding a $200 leather bag on our credit card statement. "We agreed to stick to the budget this month," I reminded him. He looked at me as though I'd accused him of something unforgivable. "So now I need your permission to buy something?" "That's not what I said. We have school fees due next week. It is if you read between the lines." He shook his head with quiet disappointment. "You're not the woman I married." By the time I pulled into the driveway that Friday evening, I felt completely drained. The house was quiet, the children were already asleep, and Ethan barely looked away from the television when I walked in. "It's been a brutal week," I said. "Would you mind if I took 20 minutes to shower?" Must be nice. I frowned. What? To have time to decompress. I've been here with the kids all week. When do I get 20 minutes? Too exhausted to argue, I simply said, I wasn't saying you don't deserve a break. You never have to say it. I went upstairs, hoping a hot shower would wash away the week, but the relief lasted only until I stepped back into the bedroom and found Ethan waiting with his arms crossed. I recognized that look immediately. It always meant another conversation about everything I was doing wrong. We need to talk. Okay? I'm not happy, Claire. I haven't been for years, and honestly, I don't think you care. I do care. Do you? He gave a humorless laugh. Because I feel invisible. I'm the cook, the cleaner, the parent, while you get to leave every morning and have an actual life. I stood there in silence, water still dripping from my hair. I'd heard the speech so many times that I already knew how it would end. The details changed, but the verdict never did. I was selfish, absent, and somehow never enough. What do you want me to do? I asked quietly. His answer came without hesitation. Be better. Before I could respond, he took another step toward me. Be the woman I deserve. Something inside me went completely still. There was no anger or dramatic realization, only the quiet certainty that I had reached the end. After 11 years of marriage, 2 children, and countless compromises, I finally understood that nothing I did would ever be enough for Ethan. He wasn't asking me to improve. He was asking me to become someone who existed only in his imagination. I nodded. Okay. His shoulders relaxed immediately. I'll try, I said. He smiled, convinced I'd surrendered again. Thank you. That's all I've ever asked. He returned to the living room as if the conversation were over. I climbed into bed, staring at the ceiling instead of wondering how to fix myself. For the first time in years, I wasn't thinking about dates, counseling, or what else I could sacrifice. I was imagining a home where I didn't brace myself before walking through the front door and where my children no longer felt the need to defend me. The next morning, I pulled into a grocery store parking lot and called the divorce attorney, whose number had been sitting in my phone for almost a year. I need help ending my marriage, I said when she answered. The words scared me, but beneath the fear was something I hadn't felt in years. Relief settled in far more deeply than fear ever could. Her office overlooked a small park, and I almost turned back before reaching the reception desk. Part of me still believed asking for a divorce meant I'd failed. The other part knew I should have walked through those doors long ago. Claire Bennett? A woman asked with a warm smile. I'm Rebecca Collins. She laid me into her office and listened quietly as I told her everything. 6 years of constant criticism, chasing impossible expectations, and watching my children absorb the tension in our home. When I finished, she asked one simple question. What do you want? I don't want revenge, I replied. I want peace. She nodded, opened her notebook and said, Then let's focus on protecting your future instead of punishing your husband. That single sentence stayed with me long after I left her office. Protect your future, Rebecca said. This isn't about destroying him or winning. It's about making sure you don't lose yourself. Over the next few months, the divorce existed quietly beneath the surface of my daily life. Every few weeks, I met Rebecca after work to organize financial records, school schedules, insurance documents, and everything else the court would eventually need. She reminded me that facts mattered more than emotions, while my therapist encouraged me to keep a journal because constant criticism could distort memory. When I read those entries months later, I realized they all sounded the same. Ethan also found another reason I wasn't enough, and I'd spent years apologizing for things I could barely remember. At home, nothing appeared to change. I still left before sunrise, worked all day, came home to cook dinner, help the children with homework, and finish whatever chores were left. The only difference was inside me. Once I decided to leave, I stopped chasing Ethan's approval because I finally accepted I could never earn the respect he'd already decided not to give. Old habits died slowly, though. For his birthday, I bought him the watch he'd wanted. He glanced at it, said, "It's nice," then complained I'd forgotten his favorite dessert. Standing at the sink later that evening, I finally saw the pattern. If it hadn't been dessert, it would have been the wine, the vacation, or something else. There was always another flaw waiting to be discovered. My therapist asked a question that stayed with me. When was the last time Ethan made you feel like enough? I honestly don't remember. And when was the last time you felt you had to earn his love? Every day. She nodded. Healthy love isn't something you have to earn. Around that time, I noticed the children trying to prevent arguments before they even started. One morning, after Ethan criticized the way I'd folded towels, our son quietly picked them up and folded them again himself. No 7-year-old should know how to prevent an argument. I locked myself in the bathroom afterward and cried because no child should ever feel responsible for protecting their parents from each other. A few days later, Rebecca told me the divorce petition was ready. 3 months after that, she slid a thick envelope across her desk. Inside were the papers that would officially end 11 years of marriage. I locked them in my filing cabinet at work, still hoping something might change. Nothing changed, no matter how long I waited. Then one Tuesday, I left work early, bought a bouquet of flowers on the way home, and convinced myself we might finally have one peaceful evening together. Instead, I walked into a silent kitchen where the table had been cleared except for a single sheet of paper. Ethan was already waiting. Sit down. The page contained 7 numbered demands: more romance, more appreciation, more time together, counseling, better communication, and a promise that my career would stop coming before the family. I've spent weeks thinking about this, he said. I can tell. I've been patient, Claire. I'm giving you one last chance to become the woman I deserve. To Ethan, this wasn't cruel. He honestly believed he was trying to save our marriage. Listening to him, I realized I'd spent years trying to meet him halfway, only to watch him move the finish line every single time. So, I asked quietly, what happens if I don't? His expression hardened. I honestly don't know whether this marriage can continue. It wasn't a conversation anymore. It was an ultimatum. To my own surprise, I wasn't angry anymore. I just felt calm. At that moment, my decision felt completely clear. The same calm I'd felt months earlier returned as I remembered Rebecca asking me a simple question. What do you want? My answer had been immediate. Peace. I folded Ethan's list once before setting it back on the table. So these are your conditions? Yes. You've thought this through? I have. And you're certain? I am. I smiled. Thank you. His expression softened immediately. I knew you'd understand. We'll get through this. I raised a hand. Give me 1 minute. Certain he had won, Ethan leaned back while I walked to my home office. Every step felt lighter than I had imagined. I unlocked the filing cabinet, took out the large envelope I'd prepared months earlier, and carried it back into the kitchen. I knew you'd, Ethan began. I placed the envelope in front of him. My answer. He frowned, opened it, and slowly pulled out the documents. The law firm's letterhead appeared first, followed by the title, Petition for Dissolution of Marriage. His expression changed instantly as he realized what he was holding. This isn't funny. I know. You actually filed. I signed everything 3 months ago. He stared at me in disbelief. You've been planning this. I was hoping something would change. You never said anything. I've spent 6 years trying to tell you. He held up the papers. So this is because of a list? I shook my head. No, it's because every conversation ended with me apologizing. Every effort became another reason I wasn't enough. And somewhere along the way, I stopped recognizing the woman I'd become, trying to meet your expectations. I was trying to save us. No, I replied quietly. You were trying to give me terms. And if I'd accepted them, I'd already accepted the consequence. What consequence? The divorce. He shot to his feet, sending the chair scraping across the floor. You can't do this. I already have. We can go to counseling. I asked for counseling years ago. You weren't serious. I was. You just never listened. For the first time since I'd known him, he opened his mouth but couldn't find the words. I won't sign any of this. You don't have to. I'll fight you. I know. You're destroying this family. I glanced toward the hallway where our children's photos still hung. No, we've been destroying it for years. He kept shouting, calling me selfish and heartless, but I let him finish before quietly picking up my car keys. I'm going to get the kids. He frowned. What? They don't need to come home to this. You think we're done talking? I opened the front door. No, I think we're finally starting. I walked outside without looking back, even as Ethan called after me. Only after I closed the car door did I realize my hands weren't shaking. I'd imagined this moment ending in tears, but all I felt was a strange emptiness. I picked up the children from Ethan's sister's house, answered their questions with a smile, and pretended nothing had changed. They didn't need to know their lives had just been turned upside down. By the time they were asleep that night, Ethan had already texted that he was staying with his mother until I came to my senses. I replied with one sentence. The children will be ready for pickup at 6. Let's keep this civil for their sake. Rebecca called the next afternoon. He left the house, she asked. Yes. Good. Voluntarily leaving the marital home could matter later. So what now? We wait. Preparing for the divorce had been difficult. Waiting for the next move was even harder. Every unknown number and every knock at the door made me wonder what was coming next. 2 days later, Ethan arrived with his mother, Linda. You've destroyed my son's family, she said before I could even invite them inside. I didn't destroy anything. You blindsided him. I spent 6 years trying to save this marriage. Linda dismissed it with a wave of her hand. Every marriage has problems. I know, but I stopped pretending ours would fix itself. She accused me of abandoning a husband who had sacrificed everything by staying home. You chose to stay home, I reminded Ethan. I never made you feel guilty for that decision, but somehow you spent years making me feel guilty for working. Linda insisted I owed him because I earned the income. I owed him love and respect, I replied. I gave him both. What I don't owe anyone is a lifetime of apologizing for supporting my family. The conversation quickly shifted to the children. I'm getting primary custody, Ethan said. Based on what? I've always been the one at home. That doesn't make you the better parent. And I'm keeping the house. This isn't something either of us gets to decide today. The court will. Rebecca had warned me not to negotiate in my own living room, so I refused to argue. Before leaving, Linda told me there was still time to stop the divorce. There is, I said, for both of us. The next morning, Human Resources emailed me about an anonymous complaint accusing me of misconduct at work. Rebecca wasn't surprised. Someone is trying to pressure you, she said. Tell the truth and let the process work. Even so, I barely slept. My career had taken years to build, and I was terrified one accusation could destroy it. Fortunately, my manager believed me from the beginning. We'll investigate, he said. But I've worked with you for 9 years. I know your character. I finally relaxed until Friday afternoon when my debit card was declined at a gas station. The joint savings account was missing $8,000. The bank confirmed Ethan had withdrawn the money that morning. Rebecca sighed when I called. He has access to the account, but judges rarely look kindly on someone draining marital assets during a divorce. I'll file an emergency motion. As I hung up, I realized handing Ethan the divorce papers hadn't started the fight. It had only been the opening move. The courthouse smelled of old paper and burnt coffee. Sitting outside the courtroom, Rebecca gave me one final reminder. No matter what Ethan says today, don't react emotionally. You don't have to prove you're the better parent. You only have to show the judge you're the more stable one. I finally believed I could stay calm. Ethan argued that he'd spent nearly a decade raising the children while I focused on my career, so he deserved primary custody, the house, and financial support. Rebecca calmly countered with the facts. I had remained an active parent, covered every mortgage payment, managed the family's finances, and provided stability throughout our marriage. We weren't asking the court to choose a favorite parent. We were asking it to protect the children's relationship with both of us. Then the judge turned to Ethan. What are your plans for employment? I don't think it's fair to expect me to work after spending years raising our children. The judge acknowledged his years at home, but reminded him that both parents were expected to work toward financial independence. Ethan had no real answer. By the end of the hearing, the court ordered shared custody on a week-on, week-off schedule. I kept temporary possession of the house because Ethan had moved out voluntarily, and temporary support was set until the final settlement. Outside, Ethan caught up with me. You happy now? I'm relieved. You ruined my life. I met his eyes. No, I stopped letting you ruin mine. At home, the legal victory didn't feel like winning. Our daughter quietly asked if they had 2 homes forever, and a few days later our son repeated something Ethan had told him. Dad said you wanted to leave us. Those words hurt more than anything I had heard in court. I never wanted to leave you, I told him. Sometimes adults can't fix certain problems, but none of this is your fault, and you'll always have 2 parents who love you. Rebecca advised me to document conversations like that, not to attack Ethan, but to protect the children if their loyalty was ever used against them. The financial hearing, a month later, was far shorter. Ethan requested a larger share of the assets, arguing he'd sacrificed his career for the family. Rebecca responded with organized financial records showing exactly how our finances had been managed throughout the marriage. The judge asked Ethan the same question again. When do you expect to return to work? Hay admitted he was still considering his options. The law provides temporary support, the judge replied. It does not guarantee permanent dependence. Negotiations moved quickly after that. We agreed to split the home's equity, retirement accounts, savings, and other marital assets equally. Each of us kept our own vehicle, temporary support would continue for 3 years, and child support would follow the shared custody arrangement. Rebecca looked at me. I recommend accepting. I nodded. Yes. Across the room, Ethan spoke quietly with his attorney before the man finally stood. My client accepts the proposed settlement. Just like that, months of legal preparation, endless paperwork, and years of conflict came to an end with a single sentence. Outside the courthouse, Rebecca smiled. You handled yourself well. I don't feel like I won. You didn't, she said gently. You simply walked away from something that stopped being healthy a long time ago. She was right. Driving home, I realized I wasn't grieving the end of my marriage anymore. I was finally beginning to rebuild my life. 6 weeks after the divorce was finalized, I stood in the kitchen of my new home. It was smaller than the house we'd shared, but it felt peaceful in a way that home hadn't for years. No one criticized how I loaded the dishwasher or found another reason I wasn't enough. The silence that once frightened me had quietly become the safest part of my day. The children needed time to adjust, but we slowly found a new rhythm. We created simple routines together. Pizza on Fridays, pancakes on Saturday mornings, and dinner every Sunday before they returned to Ethan. Those small traditions helped all of us settle into our new lives. Those routines didn't erase the pain, but they gave the kids something they desperately needed: stability. Seeing them laugh in the backyard again reminded me that they had never needed perfect parents. They had only needed a home where they felt safe. Communication with Ethan became strictly about co-parenting. Following Rebecca's advice, everything went through a parenting app, from schedule changes to school events. At first, he kept sending emotional messages, but when I refused to argue outside the app, they gradually stopped. For the first time in a long time, our conversations were no longer about our failed marriage. They were only about raising our children. 3 months after moving into my new house, I ran into an old neighbor at the grocery store. "You seem lighter," she said after asking how I was doing. That single word stayed with me all day because it was true. I wasn't happy every minute, but the constant weight I'd carried for years was finally gone. Work improved as well. The HR investigation cleared me completely, and my manager confirmed my promotion review was still on schedule. I drove home smiling for the first time in months. Then Linda called. Her voice had lost its usual anger. "Ethan's struggling," she admitted. "I was hoping you could help him." "How?" "Financially." I sighed. "I'm already paying exactly what the court ordered." She tried reminding me that Ethan had sacrificed his career, but I'd heard that argument too many times. I supported that decision for 11 years. Things can't go back to the way they were. She quietly agreed before ending the call, and it was the last time she ever criticized me. A few weeks later, Ethan appeared at my door while the children were with him. "Can we talk?" I stepped outside. "I've had a lot of time to think," he said. "I didn't realize how much you were carrying. I kept asking for more without seeing everything you were already doing." I let him finish. "Do you think we could ever start over?" I looked at the man standing in front of me. He looked nothing like the man who had once handed me that list across our kitchen table. "I hope you find happiness, Ethan," I said softly, "but it won't be with me." I gave a slow nod. I figured. Before leaving, he looked back one last time. "I never wanted to lose you. You lost me long before the divorce papers." I lowered his head and walked away. That evening, my therapist asked what I felt when I thought about my marriage. "Peace," I answered without hesitation. For years, I believed becoming the woman Ethan deserved would finally save our marriage. I was wrong. No matter how much I gave, the finish line kept moving because it had never been about my effort. It had always been about his expectations. The divorce took our marriage, the house where we raised our children, and the future I thought we were building together. But it gave me something I hadn't felt in years: peace. My children no longer watched every conversation, waiting for an argument. I no longer walked through my own front door wondering what I'd done wrong before I'd even set my keys down. The day Ethan looked across our kitchen table and said he was giving me one last chance to become the woman he deserved, he thought he was taking control of my future. He wasn't. Without realizing it, he gave me the courage to remember the woman I'd been long before I started apologizing for simply being myself. I didn't become the woman he deserved. I became the woman I had almost forgotten. And this time when I walked away, I never looked back.